So I know some of you are probably thinking, kaiju, what's a kaiju? And at least I hope some of you were thinking that, because I didn't know what it was when I first heard the name. But after looking it up, it translates to strange creature or giant monster. And this is a pretty giant monster for an RC vehicle. This is the new RedCat Kaiju, and it's an electric powered 6S monster truck, 4-wheel drive, and I bet you it's going to be a killer stunt truck as well. This is pretty cool from RedCat. You know, they're making some moves here, and this is another cool offering in a pretty extensive line of monster trucks that they already have. So we'll see if they keep the others around, but this is, I think, a welcome addition to what they have. So let's start breaking things down here, and let's start off with the body like we usually do. And this is kind of a cool Datsun-style body, I think. You know, just judging by the shape of it and the style of the headlights and everything, which I wouldn't think for a monster truck. A Datsun was kind of a compact truck. But it's kind of got that look to it, the way the cab is. And I love the brilliant blue that they put on this body. They got some pretty cool graphics on there as well. The RedCat logos all over the place. It's overall a really nice looking body. It is kind of that funky polycarbonate that they're using for this body, but this one seems to be a little, it feels a little bit stronger than some of those old ones that that would kind of crack. So hopefully that holds up when you're bashing this thing. But what I do like that they have now are these little rubber tethers, and they even have the RedCat head on there. Their new logo, it looks really good on there, but it secures the body clips, and I'm really becoming a fan of that, because the other day I was cleaning out the trunk of my Jeep, and I found like a half a dozen body clips that I was looking for when I was testing cars. So this makes it much easier to find your body clips when you're, you know, wrenching on your vehicle at the track or whatever. Let me pop this off, and we can start looking at the inside details of this truck. Check it out. It looks really good. Even from the back, it's got some fender flare decals on there. Definitely like the look of that truck. All right, so here is the RedCat Kaiju chassis. And, you know, it might look similar to some other vehicles that are out there, but I'll get to that at the end of the review. I really just want to talk about features and stuff right now. And let's start off with the front. So we've got this big bash bumper up front. It's got some LED lights in there, which is pretty awesome. The bright white LED lights. Got some shackles on there as well. Let's turn around to the rear, because we got this pretty killer wheelie bar out back. It's got these really nice rubber wheels to it. It is an adjustable wheelie bar. And then down below, it's got some red LED lights for the back of the truck. So LED lights, awesome in my book. It's gonna look good for when you're jumping and bashing out, you know, at dusk and stuff. So let's move on to the shocks and suspension now. Large bore shocks on here. We've got a nice aluminum body shock on there, threaded, so you can go and adjust the preload and everything. It does have composite caps on the top. Shock shaft looks pretty thick, but the feel of it is nice and smooth. There's a firm spring on there, and then they even have these little shields that protect the bottom of the shock, where, you know, sometimes stuff could hit the bottom of the shock and break the bottom of the shock shaft, so that's nice that that's on there. Let me flip this up so we can see the suspension arms. So we've got some nice long suspension arms and a little bit of flex to them, and for a basher monster truck, always want a little bit of flex in the arm, but it's definitely got a lot of cross bracing in there for the suspension arm setup, so when you're tumbling, hopefully that stays together. And even see some little ball studs in there, so maybe they'll have a sway bar option for that. Inside they have aluminum hinge pin plates. So that prevents the pins from pulling out of their supports, and you know, basically helps keep everything together. So they got that both front and rear. And then moving out on the suspension arm, got a pretty nice looking caster block and steering knuckle in here. What's really nice, it's captured on both sides, so that ball end's not going to pop out when you're flipping over and stuff. At older vehicles, that would happen a lot, but it's not going to happen here, because these are all captured. And we've got some really nice steel turnbuckles on the top for the camber, even for the toe, and of course the camber in the rear. And there are a few positions for tuning the upper arm for roll, and we've got a few positions for the shock as well. So if you did want to go and tune this a little bit to adjust the handling, you could of course go ahead and do that. In the rear, it is a little bit different from the front. We've got a hub in the rear, just a single hub, so it's nice that they didn't go and reuse like a steering knuckle in the back with an arm. It is a standalone hub, so I definitely like the look of that. All right, so that pretty much wraps up the suspension on here. Let's move on to the chassis. So we've got this high ground clearance chassis. It's a tub-style chassis, composite chassis, and kind of looking at it, it does seem like it's got a lot of fiber to the composite plastic. So hopefully this chassis is nice and strong. And what I notice here, it's got these little flares that go up to the shock towers. I didn't mention the shock towers before, really, other than there's adjustable positions. But it's got a nice thick composite shock tower, and it just kind of all integrates into each other, so it's really, really rigid. The whole platform is really rigid. Let me flip it over here so you can see the bottom. We've got this, nice smooth skid on the bottom. These plates do come off, so you can go and access what's underneath. and I'll get to the drivetrain in a little bit, but let me flip this back over so we can see more of the chassis details. This battery box here fits just an array of different batteries, anywhere from a 3S pack to a 4S pack to a 6S pack, or if you wanted to run two 2S packs, you could do that as well. We've got some Velcro straps and some padding inside the battery box. You could actually go and put a cover over this. It does come with a breathable cover that you could go and cover the electronics with, and that's just nice so you don't get the dirt inside your fan or inside the connections or anything like that. So I like that feature as well. Now let's move on to the drivetrain. So we've got CVA style axles in the front that go out to 17mm hex hubs. We've got gear differentials both front, center, and rear, and of course they've got metal internal gears. They've got steel out drives. They've got machine cut ring and pinion gears on there, and of course full ball bearings. And for the center shaft, we've basically got a really long dog bone in there that spans from the center differential to the front. So it's a really robust drivetrain. We've got a pretty powerful system, electronic system in here, so they went and beefed everything up so the drivetrain can handle all that power. And since we're talking about the electronics, let's move on to those. So there's a 2100 kV motor in here. This is a Hobbywing motor. So again, RedCat has partnered with Hobbywing. It does have the RedCat logo on the speed controller, but they put in some good electronics right from the start. Got a steel pinion on the motor that actually mates up to a really wide spur gear. I forgot to mention that when I was talking about the drivetrain, but it's got a really wide composite gear on there, which is really nice. But this 4-pole 2100 kV motor, I think, is going to be perfect. I love 2100 kV motors in monster trucks. I think that's a great amount of power, usable power. It's going to be a lot of fun. Up in front of it is that 150 amp Hobbywing speed controller. We've seen this before. Got some really heavy gauge wire on here. We've got some Dean's plugs. And then right in front of it is a 25 kg Hexfly servo. So this is a high torque servo, metal gears, and it's much better than just your average standard metal gear servo. So we've got some torque to actually swing the wheels. That steering servo is mounted to a double crank steering assembly. I'll just move on to that really quick. There is a servo saver mounted on the one side, but I did notice that it had like a plastic nut on there for the spring retainer, and I kind of wish that was aluminum. I'm going to ding them on that there, but the rest of the cranks do look like they're pretty stout, so I hope that they hold up really well. There is a composite steering horn on there, so you might want to go and think about grabbing a metal one if you do go and pick up this truck. And then there inside this receiver box is the RedCat receiver, and the electronics in here are weatherproof, so you can go out and thrash in the mud if you want to. So that wraps up the electronics. We talked about the chassis, drivetrain, suspension. Let's talk about the wheels and tires. So these tires, kind of a little nod to the Proline Badlands. It's not an exact replica of that. They changed the pattern a little bit, but it's got a really cool gnarly lug to it. I love this style. And then, of course, it bolts to this really cool matte black wheel, and they went and put some RedCat decals in there. I think that really sets off the look of the truck. And I think that wraps up all the details and features of this. I like a lot of this truck. It seems really stout, really durable, tunable, even like the shocks on here. It looks like a rough and tough truck. All right, it does come with the RCR2CE radio system. We've seen this from RedCat before. It's got all your trims that you need from a basic radio system. Underneath this panel right here, it needs 4 AA batteries. You are going to need batteries for the truck and a charger as well if you're looking at adding this to your RC collection. And then in this bag here, we finally got some RedCat decals. Got a nice decal sheet with a couple different character logos on it and stuff. That's pretty cool that they included that. We've got some Allen wrenches, got the 17mm wrench for the wheels, and then, of course, a manual that will help you get started in running this truck. All right, that wraps up all the details. You know what that means. It's time to go outside and drive this. Okay, we have a killer monster truck on our hands here. The Kaiju is an absolute beast. I took this thing over to the local BMX track where I was launching it off a jump, just blasting through dirt and over grass, and went out to a baseball field where there's a huge mound of dirt. They were fixing the baseball field. It was launching it off the dirt mound there, and this thing is just so much fun to drive. Now, all the action you saw there was on 4S, and I didn't get to run it on 6S, and I'll tell you why in just a little bit. But actually, in 4S power, this was a lot of fun. If you're kind of worried about buying, a 6S battery pack or multiple 6S packs because of the expense there, it is awesome on just 4S. I think you will have a lot of fun with it. It is fast, it jumps high, and it handles really, really well. But before I get into, too much, let's start off by talking about the steering, and it does phenomenal in the steering department. This servo in here, this high torque servo, has a lot of power, and it actually has a ton of steering throw. I was pretty impressed with how this thing turns. It turns almost on a dime for a monster truck. At lower speeds, at higher speeds, you get a little bit of push, but I was certainly impressed with how much steering this truck has, and that just helps you out when you're having fun with it. You need to whip this thing around quick, to do donuts and stuff like that. The steering is on point. Now, let's talk about the power. Again, it was on 4S power, enough where it was starting to grow the front wheels, so it was fun just ripping it up and down the straightaways and stuff. And, launching off of jumps, definitely a lot of power on tap. If I had to correct the jump, I just nailed the throttle, and I was able to pull the nose up with it, and it had the power on tap with 4S that just really made it enjoyable. And it actually has so much power on 4S that you can do backflips and multiple backflips. I was doing singles to start, and then I started to get into double backflips on 4S, and then I went to do some triple backflips, and it got pretty close, and I had a little bit of breakage issue, which is what I'm going to talk to you guys about. But on 4S, it's just a beast. Now, the handling, this thing launches off. It jumps really, really well, nice and smooth through the air. If you just hit the face of the ramp, let go of the throttle, it'll sail nice and smooth. And if you want, you could just pin that throttle, and you could do some backflips depending on the style of ramp that you're jumping off of. When I was jumping off the dirt mound, backflips were super easy. When I was on the BMX track, single backflips were the easiest to do there, but it is a stunt truck. Beyond a monster truck, it is a stunt truck, and landings are nice and smooth. It was very, very cold out, so the suspension was a little bit stiff. I think the oil was a bit cold, but even still, it handled really, really well. This thing, let me back up to the power. I forgot to mention wheelies galore. You just punch the throttle, this thing just pulls the nose up, back off a little bit, it'll drop the nose, and you can just power through things. So it is a lot of fun. Just the power in here is insane. And I think I've covered all the performance elements that you guys need to know. It's a blast. It's a killer truck. But now we got to talk about the durability side. And I was going crazy with it. I wanted to do some triple backflips because I thought this thing could do it, and I came pretty close to doing it. And double backflips were not a problem, but when I was trying some triples, I did go and smash up the front bumper here. I did go and break the post. Now, it was an 18-degree day out. Plastics get brittle at that temperature. I can't really fault this truck for it. Yeah, there's some trucks out there that you could go and run them in cold temperatures, but come on, guys. It was 18 degrees out, so I am going to let that slide for the breakage there. And then when I was doing that triple backflip, or trying the triple backflip, I did go and break the upper wishbone, the upper A-arm here, and I'll give you guys a close-up of that. But that might be a weak point of it. Again, it was 18 degrees out, so the plastics were really, really cold. But I did come down on the front corner of the truck, from a huge jump, and, that's when that broke. So I kind of want to leave it open. I want to go back out and test it on a warmer day, be a little bit more fair with this truck, and I do want to go and run it on 6S. So there will be a follow-up video to this video so I could show you guys, because you guys deserve it. It's a 6S monster truck. It needs to be tested on 6S. I'm going to go ahead, order up the parts, and of course, yes, I will go and do a follow-up video once those come in and show you some more bashing action. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited to drive this truck again. I think RedCat Racing did a great job, which brings me to another point that I want to discuss. There were some people out there saying it's the same as another truck, and it's not. It's absolutely not. This is a larger monster truck. There's all new arms on this truck. There's new suspension on this truck. There's new drivetrain on this truck. There's new chassis on this truck. This design does look, similar, They did get it from the same supplier, but RedCat threw their twist on it. RedCat Racing has engineers, they got project managers, they got, you know, R&D guys that are putting time into this truck. So this is a RedCat truck. They're completely involved in this truck. It's exclusive to them. So this is a RedCat truck, and you know, it's got RedCat support behind it. RedCat has been doing an awesome job with their support of the vehicle. You know, they're gonna have parts on hand, they're gonna have tech support if you need it, and they're really bringing their name to an all new level. If you really like the look of this truck, if you like the way it performed in the video, I wouldn't steer you away from it. I think this is going to be an awesome addition to anyone who's a true basher enthusiast.